The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome to Everything Cooperative this day. This is a beautiful Thursday, and we have on the phone with us Mr. Rodney North. Good morning, Rodney.
Good morning, Vernon. Good to be talking to you again.
It's a pleasure to have you on, buddy. I always enjoy our conversation talking about co-ops and how they benefit people. I understand that you are a consultant now in the Washington, D.C. area.
Yep. Helping co-ops or social enterprises who need help with either PR, marketing, or governance issues, trying to figure out who's going to decide what and how, and working out who's accountable to who. It's not something a lot of people talk about, but it's something more organizations ought to be thinking about, especially new ones that are still trying to figure out, not just, what's the product or the service that they're selling, but trying to figure out who's going to own this thing, who's going to be accountable, who's going to protect the mission. And so, I try to help people figure that out.
Well, let me ask you this question real early on. Do you like what you're doing?
I love what I've been doing.
Wow.
Whether in the current role or before that, when I was a part of a worker-owned cooperative for a long time. And I know you know about that history.
Mm-hmm. But why do you love what you're doing?
Well, so I didn't, like a lot of people like yourself, I came to co-ops a little bit later in life, and I'd had this idea that, there's business, and that's about really serving yourself. And there's nonprofits where you're serving others or the community or the environment. It's other-oriented. And there's government, which is, we're familiar with what government does, and it's an important form of public service. And I didn't understand that there was this fourth piece of the puzzle, this piece of the community called cooperatives, which are often working in the market, as for-profit businesses. Not all of them are for-profit, but many of them are for-profit businesses. They're providing goods and services like electricity or banking services or groceries or the food you eat. But they had this other way of doing it where the people doing the work or the people who show up in the store, the consumers, own the business. And so it's these, you and your listeners know about this all now. These are the people, by owning the business that they're involved with, they're infusing some democracy and I think a big dose of humanity into the business. And so, what's not to love about that?
Wow. Thank you. You said that so wonderfully well, that if you're in a business, it can be a for-profit business, and normal for-profit business or capitalistic business that we know, and I studied in the MBA program, it is what's the greatest return on investment for the stockholder. So it's all about stock, who puts in the money, that's who you're looking to benefit. It could be a little bit about how to benefit the employees, at least the employees that are higher up on the food chain management. So that's the business model. And then there's another model of co-ops where it's owned, controlled, and when there is a profit, that profit is split up, dividends, patronage to the owners, and that's the individuals who own it, whether it's the employees or the consumer. All right, I'm getting excited in here. Tell me. I'm rocking the boat here. I'm moving around, shaking. Okay. I like the way you put that, Rodney. Thank you. So what are some of the kinds of things you're doing in D.C. now? What?
Well, so as you know, I grew up here, but then I moved away for 30 years, saw a lot of things, did a lot of things, and I came back a couple of years ago, and now one of the most interesting things that I'm a part of is this thing called the Cooperative Stakeholders Group. And it's a group that was convened by the city government, specifically the DSLBD, Department of Small and Local Business Development, their Office of Innovation and Tech. And they're responsible for many things. And well, let me back up one step and say that the city government has a broad, comprehensive economic development strategy, and there's many threads to it. And one thread is cooperative businesses. What can be done to help facilitate co-op businesses? There's a recognition for some of these things that we've been talking about. There's a recognition that a co-op business isn't just like any other business. If that grocery store on the corner is owned by the people in the neighborhood, there is going to be a lot of tangible and intangible benefits that, frankly, you're just not going to get with a Walmart or a Kroger or, a
Safeway giant.
That either clearly or maybe doesn't have that same commitment to the community, where the profits are going to go to Philly or Arkansas or New York or somewhere. So the city recognizes this potential for co-ops to be a good part of economic development. They've convened a number of stakeholder groups to tackle or to explore different topics. And one of these stakeholder groups is the one I'm a part of, called Cooperative Stakeholders Group. And I got to give a shout out to a great person, Kate Marin Sinha, and I think I'm pronouncing her last name right. We just call her Kate. And she's at the DSLBD, and she convenes these meetings, she facilitates them, and it keeps the conversation rolling along. So she's been running these meetings for the last 6 months. Altogether, about 65 people or institutions have participated. And, you can imagine where, you want to do something with a certain community, but you're not sure where to start. And a good place to start is, let's just get everybody into one room, get to know each other, talk about our ideas, concerns, hurdles, like, you're struggling with X. Well, I've been struggling with that too. What can we do about it? And then somebody across the table says, I've been working on a solution. My bank, my nonprofit, or my part of the city government, we've been working on that. So, maybe together we can figure something out, or maybe together we can solve things that we couldn't individually, which, of course, is a classic cooperative approach to problem solving and to meeting needs. So we've now met 6 times, and I've been impressed by the variety of folks that we've had. People, a lot of interest in worker cooperatives, also food co-ops, child care, and usually a worker-owned child care business is something that people are exploring, trying to get started. I know there's an effort to start one in Northwest. But you have folks, again, from the nonprofit sector, financial, people like City First have participated, different arms of the city government, groups like My Brother's Keeper have been attending. And so, I'm feeling good that out of this, something, to be determined, something is going to come out of it. The co-op sector in D.C., I'd say is in some ways kind of nascent. Still, it's in formation.
Kind of. You said nascent?
Yeah. So like budding. There are other cities that have more robust cooperative communities, like Philadelphia or Madison, Minneapolis, where co-ops are a bigger part of daily life. And in D.C., it's a funny mix. We have headquarters for all kinds of important large co-ops or co-op sectors. The headquarters for the National Credit Union, National Rural Electric Co-op Association. I know you've interviewed them a number of times. Of course, the NCBA, National Co-op Business Association, and so on. So you have these, large organizations that represent tens of millions of people potentially, billions and billions of dollars of business activity, yet there aren't necessarily as many grassroots co-ops in the city. The housing co-ops are one exception to that. But, here are people trying to get together to say, okay, what more could we do? Can the city play a constructive role? Or just, by getting people together who share an interest, can we help one another and get the ball rolling in a bigger, more exciting way?
So you all have met 6 times. What's going to happen now?
Well, that was interesting. So the city, to their credit, when they started this last December for these different stakeholder groups, they said, we're going to hold these meetings, at least 6 of them, no matter, if nobody shows up, we're going to have a meeting 6 times. Now, if people do show up and there's some enthusiasm, we'll reevaluate. And so at our 6th meeting, it was clear, there is interest, there's public interest in this, there's enthusiasm. So we're going to keep meeting and keep working on this. We have a mission team, because we're getting together, we need to articulate what specifically are we trying to do. So we're getting closer to articulating a mission. We have an events team, because we don't want just to be talking to each other, though that's great. We also want to be reaching out to, it could be entrepreneurs to introduce the co-op model. It could be to talk to, for example, coming up in, a few weeks, on June 26th, I'm going to be leading a workshop, and you're a part of it, which I really appreciate, called How Co-ops Strengthen Neighborhoods. And that'll be it's hosted by The Hive, which is physically at the Anacostia Arts Center. And this will be a Monday evening at 6 o'clock, June 26th. And so that is the kind of event, or it's one of the kind of events that we'd like to do, to introduce the co-op model to whoever's interested. And other times it might be more focused. So I could imagine an event where we're trying to reach out to retiring business owners and introducing...
Rodney, let me stop you here for a minute. I want to go back. You went over this event that's happening on June the 26th very quickly, and I want to make sure everybody heard that out there.
Sure.
And then we'll take a break. But on June the 26th, you're having a meeting at the Arc in Southeast D.C.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's going to be at what time again?
It's at 6 o'clock, scheduled to run until 7:30. And the host is a group called The Hive, and they're at the Arc.
H-I-V-E? Hive?
Correct, like a beehive.
Okay.
Yeah, they host a number of interesting workshops, and we'll be the first for their summer series. And that's at 1231 Good Hope Road, Southeast.
So 1231 Good Hope Road on June the 26th from 6 to 7:30, and talking about the benefits of co-ops.
Yeah, how co-ops strengthen neighborhoods. And we'll cover all the varieties of co-ops that might matter. It could be worker co-ops, housing co-ops, which best. We'll
come back and talk about the different types of co-ops, but we have to take our first break right now. We'll be right back. Thank you, Rodney.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95. Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
Good morning. This WOL traffic and weather update brought to you by the T.J. Martell Foundation. On 295 southbound, pretty slow from Eastern Avenue to East Capitol Street. New York Avenue inbound right before the 3rd Street Tunnel. It's an accident in the right lane, and the backup begins near Florida Avenue to get down toward the 3rd Street Tunnel. So very slow right now inbound on New York Avenue because of that incident. Southbound on the BW Parkway, a little slow down from 197 to Powder Mill Road. Join the T.J. Martell Foundation in the fight against leukemia, cancer, and AIDS. Your support helps facilitate cutting-edge research that will lead to more effective treatments and save more lives. Visit tjmartell.org to learn more. Now your WOL weather forecast. For today, partly cloudy, 76 for high. Tonight, mostly clear, down to 58. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, maybe a cloud in the afternoon or two. High near 81. Steve Hirschhorn for 1450 AM, 95.9 FM WOL, where information is power.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. The program is Everything Cooperative, and we have Mr. Rodney North on the line with us this morning. Rodney is a consultant for co-ops and social responsible businesses to talk about the benefits. And right before we took break, we were talking about an event that's coming up on June the 26th. That is a Monday evening from 6 p.m. to 7:30 at the Ark. That's 1231 Good Hope Road, How Co-ops Strengthens Communities. But we were talking about the different types of co-ops. So, Rodney, let me give my definition that I've created since I've been on the program. Co-ops, most of the co-ops come in 4 variations. One is owned and controlled, democratically owned and controlled by the employees. It's called a worker cooperative. Therefore, any business you can think about could be a co-op. The IBM could be a co-op, or any business you can think of. So then the second type, if it's owned and controlled by the consumers, the people that buy the products and services, then it's called a consumer cooperative. And we have food co-ops, we have housing co-ops, we have credit unions that fall in that. And in Madison, Wisconsin, there is a health clinic that's owned and controlled by the patients. It's a patient-centric cooperative, sets the rules, the policies for the business. So those are the 2 main types. And then there's the 2 on both ends of a business. That is buying co-ops. Farmers get together and create buying co-ops, purchasing co-ops. Artists get together and they do the same thing. They can purchase equipment or they purchase supplies that they need to produce the products that they will develop. And on the other end of it, you can have marketing co-ops. And Cabot Creamery is a marketing co-op. Land O'Lakes is where, in this case, farmers get together and they take their products to the marketing co-op, and the marketing co-op has the expertise to develop new markets, more markets, and pricing with the idea of getting the better price, and they can sell all of their goods. So that a pretty good summary, Rodney?
That is, and I think there's actually some exciting manifestations or exciting examples that may not jump out with that list. So going back to consumer co-ops, I think about the type of co-op sector that probably reaches, well, the second greatest number of Americans would be your rural electric co-ops, who I believe are reaching about 40 million Americans. If you were to measure the country in terms of mileage, sort of a surface area, 75% of the country is served by rural electric co-ops. These are mostly the rural areas. So, that's a huge co-op sector. There's also a well-known consumer co-op, though a lot of people don't realize it, called REI, the outdoor equipment people. So that's a consumer co-op. And then you have all these, and by the way, when you're thinking about some of those marketing co-ops, most of which are in ag, Ocean Spray, Sunkist, Blue Diamond, Organic Valley, and those are all examples there. And then you can imagine in those co-ops where their farmers are getting together not only, to sell their milk and their cheese, but also to buy feed, to buy supplies. So the way the co-op helps the farmers can be manifold. And then you have all these businesses, like smaller independent businesses that have come together. And you think about, I know you've interviewed Gina Schaefer from Ace Hardware, where the mom and pop businesses are getting together and, 1,000 those local businesses can get together to buy wheelbarrows and grass seed and gloves, whatever you sell at a hardware store. So they have group purchasing power, as well as they're getting together with their marketing. So they can market under one name, like Ace or True Value or Flooring America, and so or Best Western. So these are independent hotels and motels, but they collaborate under one brand, and helps them to compete against Hilton and Marriott and stuff like that. Or really exciting co-ops like the Associated Press. That's not what people usually think of when they think of co-op. And there's been a lot of concern about what's the nature of media. Is media becoming too consolidated? One person or one company owning too many media outlets. And a really exciting part of that scene is the Associated Press. So we're together. So there, the members, it's, the Washington Times, the Washington Examiner, your local TV station, television networks, and together they are pooling resources. And maybe nobody has, a bureau chief in Zimbabwe, but AP may have that. And then, that person can provide information that's available to all members of the Associated Press. So there's even more examples out there than is often realized.
Wow. I mean, you just told me of a couple that I did not. I had heard about Associated Press, but I did not know it as well as you just talked about it. Okay. So you got all of these people coming together to benefit each other, to work together, and that's one of the reasons I like co-ops. And when you look at the principles, that co-ops are open to everybody, anybody. It doesn't make any difference about gender or race or socioeconomic background or religion or politics. People come together. It seems like there's something common about this throughout the world, is that helping the family, that everybody wants to help their own individual families to prosper, and prosper meaning in some cases to have food. There was one story, I think it was Papa Sin from Senegal. It was somebody from NCBA Clusa who said that the farmer who had joined the co-op had said the benefit was that they had food for the whole year. And at the end of the year, they had some savings. Now, they said it a little bit differently, but that's what it meant. Where before the co-op, they did not have food for the whole year, and there was no such thing as savings.
It's a classic story that often, what I need or my family needs is also what you need and your family needs, and what our neighborhood needs. And, divided we fall, united we stand, or maybe it's said the other way around. And that we can do stuff together. And often we can do it better, we can do it more efficiently than we can by ourselves. For years, I was part of the Equal Exchange Worker Co-op, and we worked with dozens of small-scale farmer co-ops around the world. And these are farmers who have anywhere from 1 acre to 20 acres, and they're in poor countries like Peru and Burkina Faso. And individually, they can't buy a truck or build a warehouse or, have a sales manager to export their cocoa or their coffee. But together, 100 of them can pool their money, buy an old truck, buy an old computer so they can start trying to do some trading. They can communicate with the capital city. They can communicate with the outside world. And then they just keep coming together. And by the end, we were working with some co-ops who had tens of thousands of members, especially in East Africa. And there was just no way they were going to have the same kind of success just working on their own.
We also hear a lot about India. In India, there's a lot of huge co-ops where people working together for the benefit of each other, which is...
Yeah, I have to tell you this quick story. So I was speaking on a panel at the International Co-op Summit in Quebec City in 2014, and the other three gentlemen on the panel were from Singapore, I think France, Belgium, and India. And the Indian gentleman I forget his name, but he is the executive director of the Amal Co-op, which is one of the world's largest cooperatives. It serves over 1 million members. These are dairy farmers, some of whom have a single cow, or maybe more. And together, they were doing something like $4 billion in business annually. And it was all made up of these very small-scale farmers. But again, just through persistence and collaboration, they just kept building this co-op. I think maybe it went back to shortly after World War II, and they are by far the dominant dairy provider, dairy business in India.
And if each individual farmer, where they had 1 cow or 10 or 20, could not do this on their own. And
no, you can't set up the refrigeration systems. You need something called a cold chain where you can keep the milk refrigerated, from the time it's picked up from the farm all the way to the refrigerator in the grocery store. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of capital. And of course, a lot of coordination, especially when you're coordinating 1 million dairy farmers over a whole country. Yeah, that's not something you're going to do by yourself. But to get back to bring it back home to D.C., it's the same kind of problem where, you've seen it with affordable housing. A single low-income family can't by themselves, buy their one apartment in a big apartment complex. But when all the families are going together, if there's like a supportive policy environment from the city government and so on, if maybe there's access to co-op friendly financing from it could be a bank like City First, or getting financial support from somebody like Wycliffe
or National Co-op Bank. National Co-op Bank.
Yeah, of course, National Co-op Bank.
We have to take our second break. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry to cut you off because I get so engrossed in the conversation I forget about breaks. Okay. We're going to take our second break, and then we'll be right back, and we'll talk about the low-income housing and how people come together to benefit each other where they couldn't do it by themselves. We'll be right back.